Welcome. Scott here. Here is a quick boss guide for the upcoming LUFENIA Plus event, Intersecting will starting out. The featured units are Rem and 7 from Final Fantasy Type 0, Seifer from Final Fantasy 8 and Ceodore from Final Fantasy 4 The After Years. This raid event also marks the debut of Rem LD. Rem and Seifer will be getting their C90 awakenings. We will be fighting 3 Manikins. Rem and Vivi Manikin have 9 million HP each. Warrior of Light Manikin has 11 million HP. The turn requirement is 75. The HP requirements is 15,000. Before I continue further, here is a small disclaimer clause for the video. The guide is written based on the time that the event was released for the Japanese version. Please do note that it is possible that the boss fight mechanics might differ when the actual event is released in global. Firstly, let's go through the LUFENIA Plus Orb Conditions. The LUFENIA Plus Orb will activate when Rem Manikin's HP drop to 79%. It is a non-cancellable orb. The orb attack is a fatal attack. To uptick the orb, you need to manipulate turns. On the screen I have listed down the units that could help for the orb. They are Rem, Onion Knight, Leela, Sid Reigns, and Afma. Ignis and Ash will also work for the orb, but you need to use their EX. Gilgamesh has 25% chance of using a turn manipulation skill, Royal Sword. Now let's proceed with some party setup recommendations. Recommended calls abilities. To ensure that you are able to constantly break them, it is important to inflict defense down debuffs. Example of calls abilities that inflict defense down calls are Ferris, Titus, Jack, and Vanille. To speed up the fight, using HP damage up debuff calls like Karasame, Gabrinth, Liliset, Fran, Maria, and Ignis are useful. Although a bit trickier to use, Aura type HP damage up calls like Sid and Kamari are also viable. Most recent C90 units have HP Aura call. You can use Dissidia DB call finder to find out more. As mentioned in the previous slide, you need to do turn manipulation to uptick the orb. You can use Onion Knight or Sid Reigns as your call ability. Next, I will be covering units that will be useful to handle the fight mechanics. Like other LUFENIA Plus events, it is always recommended to bring supports for their aura and buffs. They are Garnet, Leela, Horum, Setzer, Agrias, Katesith, Queen, Ishtala, Bartz, Lena, Lyud, and Sarah. Garnet BT plus support will help to trivialize the fight, that you could finish the fight before you worry about the boss mechanics. Leela will make the boss attack a non-issue. If you don't want to play to the orb, you can bring Echo for the fight. The Manikins will be scripted to do HP attacks at the 49% HP threshold, so you will be facing a barrage of HP attacks. Damage mitigation is highly recommended. Options include Snow, Core, Gladiolus, Warrior of Light, Beatrix, Orin, Zac, Guy, Prompto, and Kader. As mentioned earlier, you need to do turn manipulation to uptick the orb. They are Rem, Leela, Sid Reigns, Onion Knight, Afma, Vanille, Ignis, and Gilgamesh. Rem works very well for the fight even with just her 35 CP. This is a 3 enemies fight. Other than Garnet, you can consider bringing the following units. They are Lon and Ren, Ceodore, Strago, Seifer, and Squall. With proper setup and a twins friend, Seifer can solo this fight. The Warrior of Light Manikin can inflict lock, which won't allow you to damage the other Manikins unless their HP attacks are AoE. So to handle that, you can either use debuff evasion or debuff cleansing to remove the lock debuff. You can dodge the lock debuff with party-wide evasion with Leela. On the screen, you will see a timeline showing the HP thresholds triggers that you need to watch out for. The LUFENIA aura and stats boosts are triggered at the start of the fight and when Rem Manikin HP drop to 79% HP threshold. The orb is a tight one at the start, but you can easily uptick it by using a turn manipulate skill. When each individual Manikin's HP drop to the 49% HP threshold, all the Manikins will use their special HP attacks. To minimize the HP damage, it will be better to stagger the trigger or set up damage mitigation to ignore the attacks. At the current C90 era, this is probably the easiest LUFENIA Plus stage. This fight is used a lot by JP content creators to conduct damage tests. You can just simply eliminate Rem Manikin to remove the orb. Now let's proceed with the boss mechanics proper. Like the previous LUFENIA Plus fights, the boss will gain big stats boosts, brave damage, and brave gain reduction auras when you deplete their HP to a certain threshold. The thresholds trigger for this fight is at the start of the fight and 79% HP thresholds. At the start of the fight, Rem Manikin will boost their defense stats by 200%. When Rem's Manikin HP drop to 79%, it will further boost all the Manikin's defense stats to 300%. The maximum brave damage reduction auras is 80%. The maximum brave gain reduction auras are 80%. To handle the defense stats boost, you can inflict defense down calls. To handle the brave gain and brave damage reduction auras, you can use brave damage up debuffs like Jack, Sephiroth, or deploy a support with brave damage up like Lena. Now, I will be covering the boss key mechanics in detail. When each of the individual Manikin's HP drop to 49% HP threshold, they will use their strongest HP attacks. For Vivi, it will use Double Fire, which is a double single target brave plus HP attack. For Warrior of Light, it will use Bitter End, which is a single brave plus HP attack that grants the party shields and inflict lock on all targets. The attack will do 50% splash damage. For Rem, it will use Siphon Delta, an AoE brave plus HP attack. Unless you have damage mitigation, it is recommended for you to stagger the triggers instead of bringing them down all at the same time. Warrior of Light Manikin's lock can be annoying for single target units. To remove the lock, you can use a debuff cleansing skill or killing the Manikin. The lock debuff can prevent with debuff evasion or AoE evasion. Now I have reached the last slide of my boss guide presentation. Other than the scripted AoE HP attacks at 49% and the turn manipulation needed to uptick the orb, the fight is actually very easy. On the screen, I have a table detailing the boss's entire moveset. For the current era, the bosses have very low HP pools compared to the current HP range that most LUFENIA bosses have. You will probably finish up the fight with AoE burst phase even before they start to pose a threat. With a proper setup, Seifer with his C90 awakenings, he can solo this fight. I have come to the end of my boss guide presentation. Hopefully you find it useful. If you like the video, please give a like. Please subscribe to my channel for future gaming content. Good luck for the fight tomorrow. Bye.